morning, Joan.
All right, Joan, good morning. We can barely hear you. We're on the steam engine here at Old Tucson. This is the train that Clint Eastwood actually drove right into a bank for the movie Joe Kidd. And when you look around here, this train was built in 1872, but now it's here doing movie work. And when you look around here, you get the sense of all the famous stars who have been here. John Wayne played here, Randolph Scott, Glenn Ford, Kirk Douglas. Even Ronald Reagan once made a movie in the Old Tucson studios.
And look what it did for his career. Isn't that incredible?
I don't know if you can do anything for ours.
And don't forget about the, whoa.
All right, I'm getting off.
Yeah, don't forget about the women folk. Rhonda Fleming, Maureen O'Hara, even Elizabeth Taylor worked these dusty streets, and Angie Dickinson, who will be joining us in this half hour to relive some of the old Western moments.
Right now, though, we're going to go to New York for the news and the weather of the morning. Not bad, huh? Well, we're going to turn to the story of a living museum that captures the spirit of the desert when Good Morning America continues. It is now 15 minutes after the hour. Morning, ma'am.
Howdy.
Good to see you. You can call him a bronco buster. You can call him a cattle herder. You can call him just about anything. But there's no question that the American cowboy has a unique place in the history of this country. They are probably the truest heroes of our folklore, quintessentially American. Cowboy is kind of an all-inclusive term, which includes gunfighters, gamblers, rustlers, that's the dark side, but also the frontiersmen and ranch hands who built the West. There are hundreds of years of American frontier history. The cowboy flourished for only about 20 of those years after the Civil War, 1865 to 1885.
They were hard riding, hell for leather, boisterous, devil-may-care, but they could do anything, and they were colorful, and the whole life, the whole breed is something we as Americans have chalked up as a hero, as a true American hero. There wasn't anybody else like them in the entire world. They were ours, uniquely American. She asked me, why does he ride for his money? And why does he rope for short pay?
He's not a cowboy himself. He says the life is too hard. But Marshall Trimble has spent his life studying, writing, and singing about them.
There really are three kinds of cowboy today, I think. The mythical cowboy, the folklore cowboy, and the real cowboy. And a lot of what the real cowboy was myth. Stories handed down. In nostalgia, I guess there's a story they tell about how many cowboys does it take to screw in a light bulb, and it's two, one to screw it in and the other one to write a sad song about how they miss the old light bulb.
Hollywood built the cowboy legend in hundreds of movies. Television followed along. This is the gunfight at the OK Corral, filmed here in Old Tucson with Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas. The quick draws there are a movie invention. Accuracy with the Colt 45 was at a premium for cowboys, and they never worried about speed. But the OK Corral shootout actually happened in Tombstone, Arizona. There is still a recreation for tourists of the OK Corral incident in Tombstone, complete with feuding Earps and Clantons. Jack Fisk, a.k.a. Wyatt Earp, lives in modern-day Tombstone for a reason.
Tombstone today is a living, breathing leftover of the Old West. Its people, the cowboys, the gunfighters that you see out here reenacting the shows, are people who have a deep love and a sense of history for this town.
People say you can ride through the streets of Tombstone and still feel the ghosts of the Old West. Gambler and frontier marshal Wyatt Earp, the no-nonsense sheriff of Cochise County, John Slaughter, even the now very peaceful cattle rustlers, the McLowrys and the Clantons. You feel their ghosts, but their legend lives. America likes its heroes, even if they're over 100 years old.
A kid wants to grow up and be a cowboy. A lot of them do. They still today. And there aren't as many cowboys around today because there isn't as much work for them. But you have freedom still. You have the out of doors, the breathing air, and nobody's looking over your shoulder, bossing you around.
Well, the style of it is what I like because it's the freedom.
I'm not stuck in the rat race in California or anywhere else. I'm out here where I want to be.
Smelling the sweat and hearing the leather creak, and just being out in the open. Pretty enjoy it.
Anything to do with horses, training, breaking, shoeing, doctoring. I can do it.
Yeah, I knew I was going to be a cowboy when I was 3 years old, and I've been a cowboy in my lifetime. I can't do nothing else. You know, a real cowboy, he loves what he stands for. You know, his word, his honor, and his hard work.
And so this seems a very appropriate time for Spencer to introduce you to a real cowboy.
All right, Charlie, well, you know, most of us who grew up watching Western movies and Westerns on TV probably have a certain image of a cowboy in our mind, a tough, rugged, but gentlemanly kind of fella. Well, right now I'm going to introduce you to a guy who's sort of an oral historian of the proud cowboy tradition. He is cowboy poet Waddy Mitchell from Elko County, Nevada.
Hello,
Good to have you
Spencer.
here, Waddy.
Thank you.
No, I never really thought of a cowboy as being someone you'd associate with poetry. Tell me how the tradition of cowboy poetry began and why is it so popular these days?
Well, I think it began strictly for the reason that people wanted to, the cowboys wanted to entertain each other, you know, and I know Hollywood's made us all out pickers and singers, but I can't even play radio in tune, so most of us would just tell stories. We find out if you tell a story more than about 3 times to your friends, they're going to say, I know, we've heard it. Well, but if you've got a rhyme and a meter to it, they'll listen to it over and over again.
That makes it more interesting.
You bet.
What would be the subject matter of some of the poetry that you might write?
Well, that's like asking what is a novel written about.
Okay.
Any subject at all it's just the difference between cowboy poetry and anything else is just it's from a cowboy's perspective.
All right, well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to back it out of the way and let you deliver for us one of your own creations, all right?
You bet.
Cowboy Poetry by Waddy Mitchell.
Did you ever wish you could turn time back, live things over again, to abort regrets or bite a lip so as not to hurt a friend? You could pull up your horse before he fell, the steer still got away, or maybe push a little harder when the works went bad so the job get done that day. You could back up and listen to your granddad's tales. They're buried with him now. You could even say no when your pa asks, son, you want to learn to milk a cow? You could take the time to help your son maybe train his pup or teach him that no good will come from ever giving up. And the colt that bucked in the rocks that day might not have if your temper hadn't flared. If you'd have figured out where his mind was at, you'd have seen that the bronc was scared. If we could just but relive time, our lives would be enhanced. But you best try to do it the first time round, 'cause there ain't no second chance.
All right, all right. Now, cowboy poetry is for real. I mean, this isn't just something we started doing recently. Cowboys in the old West really did write poetry.
Oh, it's a tradition. And probably more around the campfire stories and poems than songs ever.
So why do you think it is then that in modern times we depict the cowboys as, you know, strumming guitars and singing songs, but you never see a cowboy writing or reciting poetry in any of the Western movies?
Well, you do. You do in real life. You see him doing it, but in the movies, can you imagine John Wayne doing poetic?
Matter of fact, I
kind of shoot the image that Hollywood's made of the real cowboy.
Yeah. Well, we're going to, in our next half hour, meet some of the people who've helped contribute to the great image on the silver screen of the cowboy and the cowgirl, too. We're going to have Hugh O'Brien and Richard Farnsworth joining us, and Angie Dickinson and Waddy Mitchell. It was a great pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Spencer.
Reciting some of your poetry. Good Morning America.
We're going to do this
in just a moment.
here. 25 minutes after the hour, Spencer and I back in Old Tucson, and we're with some of the stunt persons here who work in Old Tucson. Let me get your name.
John Manx.
And where are you from, John?
Well, originally San Francisco, but been here a long time. Guess I'm an Arizona native now.
What's long?
20 years.
Now, what do you actually do? I mean, do you work in movies that are made here? Do you work in the shows for
Well, we
we
entertain every day out here for the audiences. We do gunfights, stunt shows. We have a magic show right here in the theater, in fact. All day long entertaining, and when people like you come along, we try to entertain them, too.
Or shoot them in the back. What's your name?
David Cantner.
And David, when you were in high school, and people are asking you what you were going to do when you grew up, did you tell them this?
Yes, I did.
Spencer?
Let me talk to the stunt lady over here and find out what your name is and where you're from.
My name is Cindy Cheney, and I'm from Tucson.
Now, what made you decide to get into stunt work? When you were a kid, did you like to tumble around in the dirt or what?
Well, actually, the girls out here are not really stunt people. We do the magic show, and we do can-can show, and occasionally we do some gunfights.
Right, but none of the rough stuff, nothing that would...
Too much of the rough stuff.
Okay, and your name is?
Scott Merritt.
Yeah, and you've been doing this for a while?
About a year, a little less than a year, actually.
You look pretty young. Are you growing facial hair yet? Wait a minute.
Hey, I'll just wait till they get him. Yeah, give me that gun.
It's not going to be a stunt when he does this, right?
I pull my own weight out here. You know, I might look young, but I'm older than he is back there, so at least I can go to bars still.
And he's got some facial hair. Who said he was the oldest? Yeah. What's your name?
James Reeves.
How old is old, James?
34.
Boy, you don't grow too old in these parts, huh?
Not too old. Not too old at all.
How long you been working here?
About a year now.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How do you break in the new guys?
Let me show you. We have an initiation that any new stuntman that comes on the team, we throw him in the fountain after the first movie Mayhem production show.
Which is our stunt show.
Yeah.
Where's the fountain, guys?
It's over the Mexican Plaza.
You can't get there from here.
Good. I was actually going to suggest that Spencer would be available for the initiation rites in just a few months.
He said the same thing about you.
I want to know if anybody ever gets hurt doing any of these stunts around here.
All the time.
Any serious injuries?
Frequent. I don't know. Not all the time. Usually just bumps and bruises.
Who's been injured?
Yeah.
You've been injured? What happened to you?
I broke my collarbone.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Who did it to you?
He's not here today.
Yeah, you should see the other guy, right?
That's right. How did it happen?
It was a stunt called a backflip, and I hesitated, and he tried to compensate, and I landed all my weight right here.
You backflip off of what?
Off of his back. I run at him like I'm going to deck him. He ducks. I go across his back, and he springs me over.
Oh.
A lot of the stunts that we do out here, that if you have to totally commit yourself once you get started, because if you hesitate, that will stall you out, and then you can get hurt.
You totally committed, Spencer?
I should be committed after this show.
Maybe we should initiate Spencer. Would you like to try one, Spencer?
Show me a simple stunt.
Zach, we're going to do a little bit for you.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, yeah?
I am
Okay,
going to
great.
work with the stunt guys later.
Great.
Does anyone here work with horses in your stunts? You ever take a tumble off a horse?
Once in a while. Gunshot reaction to the side, usually that's in a slow load.
The old gunshot reaction to the side during a slow load. Okay. Coming up on Half Past, we'll be back.
You know, I'm just kidding around.
And it's now 10 minutes before the hour. Long before Angie Dickinson became forever known as Sergeant Pepper Anderson in the television series Policewoman, she was in the shoot-'em-ups, the westerns, many of them made right here in the Old Tucson studios. And I guess, or at least I'm told, the last time you were on this train platform, you were in a movie called Once Upon a Texas Train with Willie Nelson and who else?
And Richard Widmark was waiting to greet me as I pulled in
on
one
that train?
night. That
Is that
train.
Right?
With lots of steam, and it was so fabulous.
When was that?
I think it was about 88 or roughly 1988.
So it's fairly recently that you've actually played on this lot.
Yes, and I love it so much. It's so real.
How many movies did you actually make here?
4.
4?
4 biggies. Couple biggies, couple of mediums.
Now, what were the biggies?
Rio Bravo.
John Wayne.
Oh, yes, and Dean Martin and Ricky Nelson and Walter Brennan.
Ricky Nelson?
Ricky's first picture.
That's right. Yep.
And I know he came to the set, and I said, doesn't it make you nervous singing to all those people? He said, no, this makes me nervous. And Duke Wayne was, of course, the most non-nervous man I know.
Is there a difference in westerns than other movies?
There's a difference. I don't know. For me, the atmosphere is so easily conjured up. You don't have to act very much.
Well, this place brings a little atmosphere in and of itself.
It's so wonderful. Yeah. On Rio Bravo, we added the street. Howard Hawks, added the end of the street was it was just a straight street, and he added the curve, so like a much bigger street, and that was us.
Are there actually sound stages here, or is it just exteriors?
No, there are sound stages, and there weren't at that time.
Was that right?
We did only the exteriors here on several pictures.
And then you went where to do the rest?
Los Angeles.
That's all done there?
Yeah. Did Young Billy Young. We shot out here, Robert Mitchum and David Carradine.
Young Billy Young, as I recall, that was about, I think I saw that, corruption in a town somewhere, right?
That sounds familiar.
Do you find yourself remembering lines at odd times in those movies, or do they all sort of meld together?
We don't get too many lines like "Here's looking at you, kid," that are so memorable.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful to look at a movie like Casablanca and hear all the lines that are so routine. Play it again.
Do you ever go back and look at some of those westerns, though? And
yes.
And what does it bring back? What does it conjure up?
It conjures up wishful thinking that all of these people are back and that I'm young again and able to jump on a horse. And
Robert Mitchum actually proposed to you in Young Billy Young, didn't he?
He came into the saloon where I was working and dancing on the stage, and he just walked up to that stage and grabbed my legs and threw me over his shoulder, and I went out kicking and screaming, and he was proposing to me. So by the time we got to outside of Old Tucson, he had asked me to marry him, and of course I didn't resist him.
And it was in Rio Bravo, it was Feathers?
Feathers.
Right.
Dean Martin still calls me Feathers every time I see him, and that's years ago now.
She was, how do I say this nicely? She was a lady with a past.
Yes, and John Wayne was telling her to get out of town now, and I didn't go.
Because of the past, was it?
Because of him. I liked him. I said, "You're going to have to throw me out, John T."
You do remember some of the lines.
That
then.
one I remember, because I look at it quite often whenever it's on. I just love that movie. And it, of course, was my big shot at making it good.
Yeah, and it was after that that your contract, I think, got sold, wasn't it, to Warner Brothers? It was like the old days where they sell ball players.
He did. I likened myself to the Kurt Flood issue. Howard Hawks sold my contract without my even knowing it, much less I had not realized I signed the approval to Warner Brothers.
It was like the days in baseball now. People always ask about what you're doing now, I know, and there's something you're very involved in with your sister, which is something I know you want to mention.
Oh, and I thought you were going to ask me about Wild Palms on ABC.
Oh, okay, Wild Palms.
I did a mini-series for ABC, and that's going to be on in February. Yes, I work all the time for the Alzheimer's Association because my wonderful sister, who's quite young to have gotten the disease at 55, it's a terrible disease. So as much awareness as I can bring to the people to know about it, I do. So I work with that all the time.
And I know, since I've read about it, that the family is banded together and she's in good care. Thank you,
yes,
Angie, for being with us.
Thank
Great pleasure
you.
to see you.
Oh, I loved it.
Fun to bring back the memories.
Thank you. I agree.
And Good Morning America will continue in just a moment. Stay with us.
Bless you.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead here. Let's bring him on in.
Yeah, Holly.
And you thought traveling by bus was tough. Good morning, America. I'm Charles Gibson, and the Great American Southwest Bus Tour, or Stagecoach Tour for today, has come to Tucson, Arizona. Spencer, I don't know.
I don't know either, Charlie. We're actually at Old Tucson Studios, a theme park and a movie studio just outside Tucson. And I want to tell you, I've seen some movie sets, but this is realistic. This looks like the real thing.
This place was built, the Old Tucson Studios was built in 1939 to make the movie Arizona, and they have been making movies here ever since. Also television series. The Young Riders was the last one here. Have Gun Will Travel, Gunsmoke, a number of things have been done on this set. And if you're wondering where Joan London is, well, she's not crazy enough to be here with Harold on the Stagecoach. She's up at the Canyon Ranch Spa. Joan? It is now 25 minutes after the hour. As we have mentioned through the morning, Spencer and I are at the Old Tucson Studios, where they have been making movies and television shows for more than 50 years. The public can come through here. There are tours every day. And Spencer's up in the crowd here with one of the tour directors who can give us a little history of the Old Tucson Studios.
Right, Charlie. Sitting with me is Bill Burnside. Bill, good to have you with us this morning.
Good morning.
I guess you've seen a lot of activity take place here on Front Street here.
I certainly have over the years.
Why don't you tell us about some of the more memorable things that have happened here in this street?
Well, I think one of the big things happened down there is that big two-story building right down Front Street down there is where John Wayne did McClintock.
Son of a gun.
Come up just a little bit farther and we can see where Glenn Ford did 310 to Yuma. And then if we looked a little bit farther down the street there, we would see where they did Three Amigos just a few years ago.
Oh, yeah, a more recent one, right.
That's right.
That was Steve Martin.
Martin Short.
And Chevy Chase.
That's right.
That's the three real buckaroos.
Now, how much of that, not the stunts, but how much of the actual action did they participate in themselves? Did they know how to ride, for example, those three guys?
Well, somewhat.
Yeah, somewhat.
Yeah, somewhat, yeah. We won't call them experts or they weren't ready for the Olympics or anything like that.
Not ready for primetime cowboys.
They did a pretty good job, particularly with those big hats they had to wear in that, if you remember. You know, if the wind blew the wrong way, it turned them around. So.
Is there a difference between, now this is which street over here?
This is Front Street.
This is Front Street?
Right.
And then over here is Kansas Street where our crane camera is shooting. Is that a little bit different?
It's quite different. You know, when production companies wanted to do something in the Southwest, they were down Front Street.
Right.
If they wanted to do something in the Midwest, they were on Kansas Street because you could see the architecture, the buildings, and the whole atmosphere is quite different.
Different style.
Let me ask you, there's a sense now that Westerns are not in flower the way they were certainly in the 50s and 60s, but there was a recent movie, for instance, Unforgiven. Everybody thought, well, maybe this will be the rebirth of the Westerns, and it did okay. Are things slower here in movie making now because there aren't as many Westerns being made?
Well, I would say that we're never slow around here. If it's not the Westerns, it's commercials or it's some other foreign-type films that might be in here, so we've been very, very busy right along.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the Westerns are as popular per population if we look at the various generations and so forth. Just have to do a little learning all over again. You know, when ABC did Young
what
Riders.
What was that again?
ABC.
Oh, I've heard of that, yeah. I see their names on the checks every week.
Yeah. Wonderful. Do you get many young crowds coming out here, Bill, or do you get basically an older crowd, a more mature crowd?
Like Spencer.
like
Spencer.
Yeah.
Depends on the time of the year and the time of the day. You know, we get a lot of so-called snowbirds that come here, and they're here at certain times, but we also have the young folks that come out. We just completed a big promotion for Halloween here almost all month, the whole month of October.
Let me ask this audience. Give me a favorite cowboy. Clint Eastwood, Billy Crystal from City Slickers.
That's good. That's good.
Tom Mix. Now I want you to stand up. See this lady. Now this is a lady of more than a couple of years. She remembers Tom Mix, right?
I do. I remember canning 15 years too before it became a studio.
You were canning out here?
I know. I was one of those.
We'll save that till another show. Thank you very much. 8:30. Good Morning America. We'll be back.
Okay. Joan, I feel like I'm walking through the ghosts of every Western movie and every TV Western ever made. This place is so realistic. It opened to the public in 1959. In fact, I got one of the brochures right here. It says Old Tucson Studios. Old Tucson Studios, created in 1939 for the motion picture Arizona, starring Gene Arthur and William Holden. Since that time, over 200 motion pictures and productions have chosen Old Tucson as their location. It's amazing. Experience the magic of the Old West right here in Old Tucson. Absolutely amazing.
You read from the brochure. Anything going on?
No, not a thing. Not a thing. Quiet. It's all quiet here.
Yeah, leave him alone for just a couple of minutes. He gets into a lot of trouble. Coming up in this half hour, we're going to have some real cowboy music, and you're going to meet some real Hollywood cowboys.
Yes, sir.
So let's go.